Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chatting with Asta. This is a series that I created in order to reach out to different people in my life as both inspirational and informational resources. I've got a lot of friends, old and new, and if you're enjoying this episode especially, don't forget to thumbs up, comment, subscribe, share, and hell, shuffle that playlist because there's plenty of other great voices you can listen to. Today, my guest is JOELLE ARAWJO. She is the co-owner of Fennec Design, and she specializes in printmaking, jewelry design, and she's just this really cool small business owner that I've gotten to know over the years. I am actually wearing something from Fennec Design today. Welcome to the show, JOELLE.
Hey.
Hey. Woo! So cool to see you.
Yeah, I know. Before this started, we were kind of talking about how it's like this weird thing where you like view someone through the bubble of like social media, and then when you actually like interact with them, it's can be like a very illuminating experience where it's like, oh, that's your body language. That's what your voice sounds like.
Yeah, and it's just been interesting because like we were talking a little bit before, you're definitely a part of my life. I was so attracted to the different styles and the designs that you and Justin create together. And obviously, like, I'm a sucker for couples that have businesses together because I work and live with my husband and we do everything together, and people are like, whoa. And how did you start to create Fennec Design? Like, when did this come about?
So it was totally an accident. My husband, before I met him, was already doing printmaking. He was in like a lot of punk bands in his 20s, and he would like teach himself how to screen print and like make t-shirts for stuff, and kind of had gotten into like art through this kind of like back door of music. And we started dating, and he was like, oh, you doodle a lot, you should just like draw some stuff, we should do some things together. And it just kind of like spiraled out of control. Like, I had never really done any art when I was younger. It just kind of like was a thing that I happened on in my 20s, so very much an accident.
You're very talented. Like,
oh, thank you.
I love this stuff, and I love that like your stuff comes inspired by just like, everything from like sacred geometry to like medical illustrations, like the kind you see in those New World books describing each creature. And like that organic feel matched up with like the way that Justin likes to do like more of the geometric shapes and sharp lines, how you combine the two. What is your favorite I don't know, what's your favorite creature that you like to draw?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I think I'm like particularly drawn to like bugs, anything with like really specific like clean patterning. I think it's why I like doing like botanicals, bugs. I'm not as like drawn to drawing like mammals.
Yeah.
Like I'd be more likely to do like a bird or a snake. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I hate drawing fur. But I think also it's like I don't really want to draw anything that's like explicitly cute. And so I think that like lots of times I'm like looking for something that has that more like scientific, like precise feel to it.
Yeah, it's got that symmetrical like design. It feels very medical. I have some of your stuff here. Like you always send these little cards, and you like to have like, you can kind of like fold it in half always. I have like literally, I'm a huge fan, guys. I've got stickers on my glasses. They always send stickers. I write my guests, like I write about you guys in these notebooks, and it's just like, there's something very pleasing about the symmetry and about the patterns. It's very calming. But yeah, I was originally drawn to your stuff because I had an obsession with healing imagery, and I always associate mushrooms as like, Earth's like healers and adapters.
Right. I mean, I think, yeah, like it's interesting because I feel like most of the artists I'm friends with or that I know, their work is like indirectly or directly about people, whether it be like telling like human narratives or like literally drawing people.
Yeah.
And so like I think it's this strange thing of being like, no, I don't think my work is really about people at all.
Yeah.
You know, and I think like lots of times people make work that's like very autobiographical, even like indirectly, where it's like, no, this is about like me or my experience or my narrative, and I'm going to like present that directly or like abstract it. And I think that I'm maybe the opposite, where I want my work to have like as little to do with people as possible. I don't know what that says about me. You know, like if it's like an antisocial tendency or something, but like I very rarely would draw something that's like man-made or you know, like a representation of like people at all.
Yeah, it's got this sort of like ancient wisdom feel to it, like the things that we've forgotten that are beautiful in the world around us. And part of it, like something we talked about before we started recording, was how a few years ago you had presented like a little behind the scenes of your mind, and you shared this book, and the book was called Never Home Alone by Rob Dunn, and it and it's still on my reading list because I've got like a long ass reading list. Like I don't know how I prioritize it, but it's just like at the right moment. But do you want to talk about that? Just the idea of like,
yeah, I mean, I think that we like to view ourselves as humans as like existing separate from nature. You know, we want to like view our homes and our things and like the objects that we curate as somehow like separate from like the animal things around us. And the reality is like through our curation, through the spaces that we set up, we're like actively cultivating different types of ecosystems. So like one of the things that he talks about in the book is that like your water heater has like an entire like microcosm inside of it of like particular organisms that like thrive with that kind of heat, with like the particular chemical composition within the water. And so like through the choices that we make, we like indirectly create these like very curated, like very specific like microbiomes, which is like very interesting to me. And it's also like an area of science that's like largely unexplored, because, you know, we're like obsessed with the like obscure things. Like we want to get down into the like Mariana Trench and like out into space. Nobody wants to like study the bacteria that's growing on the lip of your counter.
Yeah. Yeah, and we also are so quick to hyper sterilize and you know and colonize at that point. Like,
yeah,
I remember after you just pointed that book out, and I was like getting ready to like purchase it, and it wasn't available at a seller that I normally get from. And anyway, I just started thinking about it, and I remember every time since that I see a bug in the house, like I look at my husband, I'm like, how does this bug affect our ecosystem? Is it the thing getting the mosquitoes? Because if it's that thing, I don't want to kill this thing.
Right.
Like, or what can we do? Like, maybe we need to like be better at cleaning sooner. Maybe we need to like do this. And it's like knowing that and feeling so connected to your own home like that, you just feel an energy shift. Like, maybe it's like hippy dippy, but like you feel like, oh, everything counts for something. And
yeah, like, oh, all of my choices actually have like direct impact on my environment.
Exactly. And that also speaks to like when I started purchasing from you years ago, it became part of this idea of conscious consumerism, and how like where we spend our money, how we spend our money, and our relationships to the sellers and their ethics and practices, what it does to the bigger world. You guys are very passionate about all of that in your work. Do you want to talk about like all of that, like sweatshop?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll preface by saying there's like no ethical consumption under capitalism. And so I think that like ultimately we need to be like really clear with people that like you are always going to be kind of settling in a way. Like I think that people can get like really obsessed with the idea of like, well, I will eventually make the perfect purchase. And I just like, you know, I think it's like worth saying that like the perfect purchase is like no purchase. You know, in a lot of ways, like the perfect purchase is like choosing to like repair and care and treat what we have really well. And so I think that there is kind of this like world of like sustainable fashion that's largely like unattainable, because it's like high end, it's luxury, it's not accessible, it's white and affluent, and you know, it like becomes another form of status to be able to like buy quote unquote perfectly.
Yeah.
And so I think for Justin and I, when we're like trying to put out work, we make it a point to like be thoughtful about where we're purchasing from. You know, we look for like independent certification of something being sweatshop free. We'll prioritize it being made in the United States as long as the place can like provide us with certification that it's not made with prison labor. Because that's like a major issue. Lots of people don't realize like, oh, I'm buying something that's made in the US, so that means it wasn't made in a sweatshop. It might actually have been made with like a state sanctioned slave labor. And so you really have to be like thoughtful. And you know, I think like the print industry and like print shops have not always had the best history with like being smart about who they work with as suppliers, and it does take a lot of effort and a lot of emails to like demand transparency from the people that you buy from. And so I think like ultimately for us, it's about like striking that balance between trying to find something that like meets that standard of like, okay, the person that made this was compensated fairly. It maybe contains like a certain quantity of like sustainable materials, but also recognizing that I don't want something to be so expensive that like 99% of people can't afford to buy it.
Exactly. And I do agree with you. There is sort of this, and I feel like it kind of goes across all things, not just like consumerism for like purchasing, but like consumerism, like you can go to an extreme with like extreme, you know, veganism. You can go to extreme with being like, oh, I only want to eat things that, you know, weren't made in a lab, or natural beauty. I have a problem with like the overhypeness of like clean beauty and natural beauty, because I feel like
well, there's so much pseudoscience in that field too, where people are like, oh, there's no chemicals, and I'm like, honey, everything is chemicals. Like this is bad science. You know, and I think there's a lot of that in the fashion world where there's like a lot of greenwashing. There's a lot of like misrepresentation of stuff. Like I know that there's you know, like upsides and downsides to like organic versus like non-organic cotton when it comes to like the quantity of water that it takes to grow organic cotton. And so like I think that like we need to be able to recognize that there are like complications. Like the US does not have the manufacturing infrastructure for us to move 100% of clothing production back here. We don't have the farmland or the infrastructure to do like 100% organic linen farming in the US. And so like we need to be like utilizing technology, utilizing resources, and like thinking creatively as we go forward. And so I think I kind of tend to like push back or against like a certain type of like Ludditism in the fashion industry that says that like in order to fix this we have to go back. You know, I think that there's a balance there.
Oh, totally. And I think of it with food mainly because I think about, you know, like people who will preach certain things about carbon footprints, but then they're so insistent on having acai bowls. And you know what's just as good as acai? Blueberries. And you can get them local, and they don't travel as far. So people, it's like you need to understand that there, you know, like what is important is when you do have companies like yours that do try to make the complications less complicated by being transparent. So it's like, if you care about this, these are the things that we can control consistently.
Right.
These are the things that we can do. And like, for me, the exchange is that I'm part of like, you know, I like your art and I like to wear your art and I like how it makes me feel. And it makes me much more conscious about my spending, much more conscious about just like, what do I not need? I mean, and also like, I am wearing them today, but I don't have to wear pants with you know, which makes them very key for quarantine life.
Definitely. Like lounging.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to add another ethical practice, you can say like pants-free clothing, you know, right. I mean, but you know, but yeah, you, a lot of your art, you have like some of descriptors on your biography on your page, and I wondered what your favorites from, like, I saw Harry Clark and Aubrey Beardsley were referenced.
Mm-hmm.
They both, I love the entire Victorian era, and I love florography and like the meanings of things. What are some like pieces that you can remember, or ideas that you just kind of feel drawn to from those people?
I mean, I think that like I'm drawn to like just like the simultaneous like I think a lot of the work is like very like ordered and specific and precise, but there's still like a lot of chaos.
Yeah.
Like the pieces are really, really full.
Yeah.
But then also they'll use like a lot of negative space. And I think I'm like drawn to like the mannerisms of work that was etched. And so lots of times I'm doing pen and ink work that's like replicating the look of like something that was etched. And I don't like, I've done etchings. It's not like my favorite way to create work. I don't feel like the like gestural nature of like my etchings is as precise as I want it to be. And so I end up using like pen and ink to replicate that a lot. So yeah, I don't know. I think like the subject matter is also like a little dark and melancholy, and I think I might be drawn to that too.
Me too. I mean, anything with like, my husband and I specifically are always like looking at mythology around the underworld and like Persephone, and like how like Persephone, like what would she be? Because I have a character that I'm working on with that name, and how would she be in the modern world? Would she be someone with, you know, a certain mental disorder? Would she be someone who like, you know, has like extreme mood swings, or someone who explores like light and dark? And but how that inherently makes you dark when you want to explore like multifacets of your personality. And I feel like I say like I love your art and it makes me feel good, but most of it's like skull and bones and like stuff, but it makes me feel good. I don't know.
I mean, I think that like I think you need a little bit of both. Like I like that balance. I want a little bit of both. Like I you know, we have this store that's open to the public, and so I get to interact with like a ton of different people that interact with my work in real time, and oftentimes they'll make commentary on the work without knowing that I'm the artist because I'm just like sitting behind the counter, you know, hanging out, and they have no awareness that they're like talking to the person that made the work. And so like it's this very interesting experience of like, you know, I'll have somebody that comes in that like looks like my mom. It's like, well, this is a little creepy, don't you think? And I'm like, I know, isn't it great? You know? And so like, yeah, I mean, I think I'm not drawn to it because I think it's like particularly edgy or like transgressive in that way. I think that I'm just like, I don't understand why this is edgy or transgressive. Like I find it quite beautiful, you know? And I think it also comes back to like a deep like American discomfort with death. You know, where people don't, like there's something like deeply discomforting to them about confronting frailty or their own limitations, and like art that like speaks to that, I think is like some people just don't want to go there.
Yeah, well, it's like this avoidance structure, and like it's built into some puritanical thought. Like eventually you'll enjoy something, so you don't want to think about death as like a part of life. You don't think about death as like, you know, I've always had such a I love just exploring the idea of our mortality, because I feel like it makes life so much sweeter, and I feel like knowing that you're part of a process, knowing that you're part of like a possible resurrection, knowing that like everything has a season and so do we, like that makes life nice. I don't but yeah, I get that. Like people, there's a lot of avoidance in our culture here, and you know, it's leaking and coming to a boil right now socially, and it's crazy.
I think to tell you that it's there whether or not you choose to engage with it. You know, you're manufacturing a reality that's not real.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a bubble. bubble. I used to live in a place just outside of Houston called the Woodlands. And so the legend is that some of the same developers that inspired the Stepford Wives developed this suburban town, and they wanted you to not leave. They have churches, banks, schools, retirement homes, like everything is inside, so you never leave. So whenever people wanted to move out or talked about leaving, the comment was always, you want to leave the bubble? And I didn't really know what that meant when I wanted to leave the bubble. I was just like, I'd like to continue seeing the world like I have always wanted. What?
Yeah.
But I think that there is a sort of, let's just stay in our little chicken coops and not, go free range, so to speak.
Well, I mean, I think it relates to like even if you think about like the fact that we like our funerary rituals and stuff are so like obsessed with like hiding the fact that the person is dead, like we pump them full of chemicals and we like make them up, and like it's like we have such a deep discomfort with our own mortality that we are like literally giving a dead person a makeover so that we can feel more comfortable, and like other cultures don't have that same relationship with death, like there are people where it's like, okay, the body is going to be in the home with us for a week and we're going to like collectively experience grief and like engage in grief together. And I think that like speaks to like that like American like autonomous like isolationism, where it's like, no, it's like very like ritual and symbolic and like prim and proper, and like how dare anyone see me be like upset. I don't know, like what a limiting thing.
Well, it's a fear of showing perceived weakness, and like weaknesses can be your strengths because they acknowledge your ability to adapt and to change and to change your mind. And it's but yeah, on that note, I wanted to ask you something I ask all my guests, which is what right now there's like all sorts of things going on, and you're part of like providing like an output with your products and ideas, and just so the audience knows, like it's just you've constantly like donated to different funds during this quarantine because you recognize like the need for that. And all of that aside, what kind of message would you like to send out to the universe, however you may define that today?
Whew. I mean, I think that it's like self-work is like the work. I think that like obviously like access to like therapy is a privilege, like a deep privilege, and if you have access, like go for it. Put the time in, like get to know yourself. I think that if you can't afford it, there are still tons of ways to do that like deep self-exploratory work. I think that like a huge part of like collective healing, whether that be like anti-racism work or like unpacking like internalized misogyny or like generational trauma, is like taking the time to like know yourself, to know like where do my beliefs come from, what has life taught me that I might not be aware of, what am I carrying around with me, and how do I distinguish like things that are done to me or things that are taught to me from like the true essence of who I am as a person. And so I think that like it's like very scary to like in some ways like take time to like confront your psyche, but I think it's like really worthwhile, and I think that people feel like a ton of shame around that. And so I think like it's really important to like frame that like outside of shame and like view it as like, hey, this is like a moment of like collective liberation. Like I liberate myself, I liberate you.
Embrace the light in the dark within yourself, because sometimes you may find things that you don't like about yourself, but you can acknowledge those and you can change them, or you can just understand yourself.
Right. Like ownership over your choices,
Yeah.
ownership over your history, responsibility for your actions going forward.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Joelle, for coming on the show. Glad to finally see you.
It was great talking to you.
Yeah. Self-work is the work.